Hi there, I'm Kelsey of Nested Sleep. Thank you so much for joining today. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about nightmares and night terrors with your child and how to tell the difference between the two and then how to respond to those things. Okay, so first let's talk all about night terrors and then we'll talk all about nightmares. So when we think about night terrors, so this is not something typically that your younger baby is going to experience. Night terrors are most common starting within the toddler or preschool years, so usually about 2 to 3 years old. And that can be due to a number of reasons, but generally that's the time frame that you're going to start seeing that night terrors could potentially happen. So before we dive into really what they are, how to solve them, the reasons, all of that stuff, first let's describe what a night terror typically looks like. So a night terror typically occurs in the first half of the night, and it will usually look with like screaming and thrashing, and it generally is for about 30 seconds up to about 5 minutes. Now, they typically are not responding to you during this time, and that's a big kind of trigger of when you can tell the difference between a night terror and a nightmare, is that typically a night terror looks like them just screaming. You can't really console them all that much. They're really still sleeping. And so that would be a night terror. Now, sometimes these can happen randomly. Other times they can happen more frequently. Usually, if it's random, happening just a few times a month, then it usually is triggered by something related to their sleep schedule, such as overtiredness, or maybe during a nap transition, this can happen more, or they can be more genetically they can be more likely to have them genetically. Maybe mom or dad had night terrors when they were a child. But if a night terror is something that is happening every single night at the same time every night, it's very predictable. Every night at 10, they're waking up screaming right before you go to bed and they're having a night terror. Typically, that needs to be triggered by something, and sometimes that can be overtiredness, but more likely it could be something that's medically triggering them to wake up from that sleep or come out of that sleep in some way. And so you want to talk to your doctor about what those causes could be. And they could be anything from reflux to restless leg syndrome or obstructive sleep apnea. So it could be something medically that's triggering them every single night to have a night terror. But if it is happening randomly, how should you respond? So typically with a night terror, again, they're not really responsive to you telling them how to calm down or comforting them that you typically would. So you just want to make sure that they're safe. So usually you will still go into their room, sit down on the floor, be near them to make sure that they're not hitting themselves, they're not falling out of bed, they're making sure that they're safe. And again, generally this is only like 30 seconds to a max usually of a couple minutes. And so you're just making sure they're safe during this time, and then you can just make sure they're all tucked back in and just all ready to go at the end of that night terror and leave them be. And then if they are having it frequently, you want to make sure you're evaluating what that cause could be. But that's usually how you're going to respond. And again, remember that night terrors typically occur in that first half of the night most likely. Okay, so that kind of covers those night terrors. Now, night terrors, they can happen at any age, but they're more likely to happen during those toddler and preschool years. And then most of the time, if you're the type of person or child that continues to have parasomnias, those night terrors often will turn into episodes of sleep talking or sleepwalking. I was definitely one of those sleepwalkers and have some pretty funny stories around that. But typically that's what it's going to look like. You just want to make sure that you're keeping them safe and evaluating the cause. Now, with nightmares, you're going to respond in a much different way, and that's why it's important to differentiate between nightmares and night terrors. So with nightmares, they're typically coming to you or calling out for you, and they're very aware of you. So you're bringing them comfort, they're talking to you, maybe telling you about the nightmare that they're happening, and you want to offer that validation and that reassurance. So how old are kiddos that are typically starting to have nightmares? So sometimes this can happen in a toddler, but more likely in kind of the preschool and early school age. So usually starting at about 3 and 4, all the way up till about 7, and obviously can happen beyond that. But when they're in that kind of 3 to 5, 6, 7-year-old, their imagination is really soaring. And so their nightmares are like, they feel like it's so real. And so in the moment, as the parent, you want to offer that validation. Oh, you're seeming really scared. And you want to really mirror and tell them what they are feeling. So if they're crying and really worked up, you could tell them, like, you seem really sad, you seem really, really scared. Is that how you're feeling? And just kind of make sure you're offering that it's valid that they're feeling that way. And you can understand why. You offer that reassurance. You're safe. Mommy and daddy are right here with you, or we're right close by with you. And then you discuss the fears during the daytime. So you want to make sure you're really not diving into what the nightmare was about at all, or what it was caused by, or anything like that, okay? Now, again, with nightmares, they, again, should be kind of random. If they're happening every single night, first off, you want to always look at your child. Are they happening every night, but your child is coming to you very calm and doesn't actually look very scared? If that's the case, then it's usually that they had that initial nightmare that did cause them fear, and then they realized how you responded and wanted to duplicate that. So if they had a nightmare and then you went in their room and slept in their room the rest of the night, or if they had a nightmare and they came in your bed for the rest of their night, then they may feel like they want to duplicate that behavior. So again, you're always going to want to look at your child, see what their emotion is. Do you feel like they are truly afraid or truly having a fear, or is it starting to just become a habit? So that's one thing. Other times is that some children, when they have a nightmare, then think that every time they wake up during the night, that means they had a nightmare. So you want to offer those suggestions for them of, okay, well, how can you independently help get back to sleep? So a couple ways you can help with that is to give them something that they can physically do. So a couple options for that could be to change their dream channel. You could have a task that they could do to help change that channel to something positive. So that could mean that they get up and hug their stuffed animal, their special changing the dream stuffed animal, or they could just flip their pillow over to the other side, something physically that they can do. And if they're having any insomnia symptoms getting back to sleep, then you can consider teaching them either some progressive muscle relaxation or grab a Zenimal to do a guided meditation to help them ease and go back to sleep. Again, if either a night terror or a nightmare is happening every single night for your child, you're going to want to reach out to help. I can help you sometimes differentiate between the two, and always check in with your doctor to make sure that there's no medical trigger that is waking them up, causing those night terrors or nightmares. Hope that was helpful to differentiate between nightmares and night terrors in your child and how to respond appropriately. Make sure to subscribe so you can continue watching these videos, and hope you have a great day.